Hey, good morning. How you fine folks doing? We got an interesting one here. I was expecting a bit more of a robust display, for lack of a better term. But what we have here is a cool species of Clematis. This is a member of the family Ranunculaceae, and if you've ever seen Coptis trifolia, you probably think, hey, looks just like Coptis trifolia. Well, that's because they're in the same family. So anyway, Ranunculaceae is the family here. Clematis is the genus, and occasionally the common name applied to this particular plant. This is Clematis virginiana, or Clematis virginica, whatever it is. And this is goes by the really stupid name Virgin's Bower. I happen to think Clematis is perfectly suitable as a common name, but whatever. Clematis virginiana, Virgin's Bower. This is a vining buttercup. So this is a member of the Buttercup family Ranunculaceae, as I've said probably twice now. The flowers bear a striking resemblance to Coptis trifolia, which is also, obviously a member of the family Ranunculaceae. And this is a real interesting one. So you get two species in New England that occur somewhat commonly. It's a popular ornamental genus. So you get a number of introduced species from Asia, from Europe, like Clematis, Florida. This is a native one. In fact, this one's somewhat common. Unusual for the family in that we're rapidly approaching fall here in New England. It's I think it's, what is it right now? The 19th? August 19th? August 18th? August 18th. So, coming into late August, early September, you start to get some cold evenings. So this guy, some of these guys in this family bloom in like April here. This guy's starting to bloom now. I just found the one flower, unfortunately. I'm looking around now. I see another one kind of through the sticky here that's a bit worse off, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. Yada yada yada. What was I saying? So yeah, most of this family, at least in New England, will be blooming, early spring. And this one's just starting now here in August. Goes into, will definitely go into at least September. I don't know about after that. Also unusual for it being a vine. This is the host plant for a number of cool insect species, as evidenced by the fact, we'll talk about the flower again in a second, as evidenced by the fact that this thing has been almost entirely defoliated. You see, that's that vine stalk right there. Look at, not a single leaf left on it, and the only reason I could even tell what it was is because it's bearing that one single flower. I did find one with leaves on it. We'll go talk about that in a moment, but let's talk about the actual flower here, because Ranunculaceae, very interesting, flower morphology here. So Ranunculaceae, you're typically dealing with what are referred to as uniseriate flowers, okay? Those are flowers that have one, basically, row of petals, or sepals, or tepals. In this case, sepals. What appear to be 4 white petals on this are in fact 4 white sepals. There are no petals on this whatsoever. They just resemble petaloid sepals, if you would. Now, this is a very common trait in Ranunculaceae. How we be looking at Coptis trifolia, which I had I either put a picture up of what that looks like, or I will put a picture up of what that looks like now. You'll note the same thing, a very similar looking flower. Coptis trifolia has these weird staminodes, these yellow staminodes that are actually modified petals. So it does have petals. They're just not what you think they are. And then, of course, numerous stamens and pistils. And that's kind of the other thing about Ranunculaceae, which I'll be better able to show you in a minute, because we'll walk across this field. We'll go look at another member of this family that's actually already gone to seed for the year. Is multiple carpels on the ovary. So functionally what you have is, I always butcher this, you have many pistils all going down to individual ovaries, if I'm not mistaken. Rosaceae can do something similar, but I think Ranunculaceae is the one where they just have really weird ovaries. It's each little stamen, or I'm sorry, not stamen, each little pistil goes down to its own independent ovary. So they're not multicarpal ovaries, it's just multiple ovaries on a flower. If I am butchering that, or if I am somehow mistaking that, I will gladly correct myself here. But yeah, they do weird things. Ranunculaceae is a very interesting family, very easy to write off because a number of the super common ones are just like weeds. And there's a lot of introduced kind of burden species. So that's the flower. And kind of the general form factor. These are vines, but they're tendril vines. They don't really hurt anything. Actually, this is kind of what makes them great ornamental plants, because they'll kind of trail over everything and not really bother much or take anything down. They don't get woody, to my knowledge. And yeah, this one, Clematis virginiana or Clematis virginica, blooms late summer, early fall. We do have another species, the purple-flowered virgin's bower, Clematis occidentalis, blooms in the spring, which is much more typical for Ranunculaceae. That species, however, you a little bit more rare. Not impossible to track down, but I mean, you get that out west in the state. You get that like out in the Holyoke range. I'm sure you'd find it where, you know, where it's a little bit more volcanic and calcareous and a little bit more fertile. Out here on the eastern half of Massachusetts, we you know, we're on that thin shit, you know. So anyway, that's the flower, that's the general vine. There's some good leaves over on around the corner here. Really quick, show you a cool member of the family, Polygonaceae. I rarely talk about that family just because it caught my eye. My yard has this in it right now. This is Persicaria virginiana, I think. Virginia Jumpseed is the common name. Nice big leaves. And a lot of Persicaria are just little tiny trailing weeds. In fact, usually, I mean, you're never really that far from one. But, whatever. It doesn't look like I've got any along the ground here. The smart weeds, knotweeds, tear thumbs. They go by a number of common names. This is a cool big native one, though. Most of them are tiny little weedy or invasive ground covers. But yeah, Persicaria virginiana, same epithet as the Clematis there. In fact, oftentimes I don't ever really get to see these with their flowers open. Persicaria, they like to close up shop early, you know. But it's nice and cloudy right now. Yeah, those are those nice, actually nice buckwheat flowers. That's nice for a Persicaria. That's nice for a buckwheat. That's the same family that the dreaded Rayneutria japonica comes from, knotweed. Also doing bunches of small little white flowers. So you can see up in there, actually some of that Clematis is in there with Oriental Bittersweet. We won't get into all that, but hang on, let's go down over here. I scared the crap out of the frogs. They didn't really like me. I was kind of bumming the frogs out over here. But yeah, that vine trails all the way down over here. You get Virginia creeper, Parthenocensus, Quinquefolia is another native vine, much more aggressive than the Clematis. But if you were to follow that Clematis all the way down and over to kind of where it goes, oh, here you go. Yeah, there you go. There's some good leaves. Trifoliate. Ranunculaceae is usually also doing compound leaves. Here's some new growth. Could trick you into believing that it's poison ivy, but trust me, that's not poison ivy, even though it's got the opposite leaves. It's merely showing a superficial resemblance to poison ivy, much more pointed. I think Clematis occidentalis obviously, well, has purple flowers, first of all, and second of all, does not have compound leaves. It has a single, simple, entire, uniform kind of lanceolate leaf. So that's Clematis. That's Clematis virginiana for you right there. Cool plant. I'm trying to grow this one from some seeds someone gave to me. I got the space for it now. We'll see what it can do. I got to fight back a whole bunch of bittersweet before that project really is able to take off. So yeah, couple interesting things in the thicket here. I'll go show you kind of a better illustration of what those ovaries look like on most Ranunculaceae in a second here. Plenty of interesting stuff going off. I mean, it's the time of year where New England looks like this. Just goldenrod. Goldenrod, goldenrod, goldenrod. I've been getting into it. I've been seeing a lot of people on this weird tangent lately with goldenrod. Oh, I'm in a lot of plant ID groups, and the Europeans are piping up, and they're really complaining about this plant, which is not only native, but I mean treasured and extremely valuable here in New England, especially here in New England. We don't get prairies. This is the closest thing you can really get to a prairie. I mean, we get glades, we get meadows, forest openings. Open habitat's rare in New England, and when you do get it, you get stuff like this, which is like a thin-soiled, I mean, you wouldn't call this a prairie, like a thin-soiled meadow. And right now it's just the goldenrod, but there's tons of other stuff in here. You come here, you know, a month ago, you get a whole different cast of plants growing here. But Solidago, I cannot stress this enough. I get it, it'll form monocultures. It's an aggressive plant, even where it's native, like right here in New England, which is, I think it's native to every single county in New England. Solidago canadensis is an important plant to have, because as you can see, while it dominates this open habitat, you don't see it growing behind me in the woods. And this is what I try to get people to understand, is just because this is an aggressive plant, what it is doing is colonizing a type of habitat that historically, if you were following the normal ecological succession in New England, yes, this plant's very aggressive, but it would cover such a small fraction of the actual area in New England, because most of New England was just closed canopy forest, and where it wasn't, a lot of times it was wetland. So you guys over there in Germany, I know it's really bad in Germany specifically, oh God, what is that coming down the road? Oh, it's a whole crowd of motorcycles. They're cranking their hogs. Hopefully you can hear me over this, but you get the idea. You know, Lythrum salicaria. You guys have plenty of crappy plants over there in Europe that are a pain in the ass to us here that you guys love, and you have. It's a difference in understanding. Just, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to be controversial. I don't want to say anything too hot-headed. Just, I wish you guys would understand that. Jesus Christ. Cranking your hog, brother! I just wish you guys would understand that there's this plant in context, even for fellow Americans, in context. Well, this plant is when you get out, you know, in the Midwest and the prairies. Really, I think it's when you see it doing what it does, what it's supposed to do, you understand why it does that. Why is it so aggressively colonizing disturbed habitat? Well, because historically that type of habitat was at a premium. This was a super long cut to film. I did not intend that. I just felt the need to interject that little rant into here. Just know that for every invasive you hate where you're from, there's an invasive where I'm from. For every invasive from my region that you hate in your region, there's an invasive from your region in my region that I hate, if that makes sense. It's just, we all have to deal with it, especially if you're in an area, you know, that's the temperate areas get it real bad. Anything near human habitation gets it really bad, because artificial disruption makes plants like this seem much worse than they actually are. If left to its own devices, all of this would grow back in. You'd get junipers coming up. In fact, there are junipers coming up in here right now. You'd get hardwoods. You'd get a whole succession of species. This would fill in, and much like the area that surrounds us now, you wouldn't have this plant anymore. You'd have relatively few, you know, forest ephemerals in the spring, and then tree species. Anyway, that's enough of a rant. Let's go take a look at a little bit more about Ranunculaceae morphology. So I guess while we're on the topic of, you know, vines and plants that are kind of unfairly demonized, here's one that I've been guilty of doing that for. I was under the impression this was an invasive species. Apparently, it is merely cosmopolitan, meaning that it occurs more or less all around the world. This is Calystegia sepium or septium. I can never remember. Cool little calyces on the thing. Member of the morning glory family, Convolvulaceae. You can see that arrow-shaped leaf right next to it. And Hedge bindweed is the common name here. Distant relative of cucurbits and nightshades, if I'm not mistaken. And you can kind of see in there, you get that little aggregated mass of pollen there, so the anthers are all fused up at the top and somewhere down in there, presumably. Either these are monoecious, which wouldn't surprise me, or there's a little stigma and style hanging out underneath that mass of pollen. I'll look it up. I got a few things I got to look up today, but you can see this is just a traily bastard. This thing, unlike the Clematis, even if you want it, which people do plant this, I guess, this gets pretty aggressive. Oh, you got a guy going in there right now. Yeah, look at the native bee. Oh yeah, he's in there. How cute is that? Yeah, get in there, buddy. Get that nectar. Anyway, let's go take a look at this. Go take a look at a couple other things. We'll get out of here. Yeah, there's a moment of zen right there. Church bells going off in the background. Massive, like almost ludicrously massive clump of Eutrochium here. Joe-pye weed, absolutely covered, just covered in native bees. Who wouldn't want this? Why wouldn't you want this? Look at that. They're not going to get bigger. Well, they can get bigger. They can get taller than this, but I'm talking like these ones are 4 feet. They can grow 6 or 7 feet tall in the right conditions. Like, this is a plant. You only get Eutrochium on the eastern half of North America. The entire genus is restricted to the eastern half of North America. This is a plant that I am like shocked, completely shocked. Is it more popular in the US as an ornamental? They love this plant out there, and I think the UK, they plant a lot of this. They're pretty fond of like Eupatoriae in general. You know, Eupatorium, Eutrochium. I'm gonna go get some extra footage of a cool vining Eupatoriae member. I have no clue what that was. Maybe the volunteer fire department going off. But anyway, this one gets planted out, but the goldenrod growing in between it doesn't. You see, when these plants belong where they belong, they form dense clumps, sure, certainly, but not a true monoculture. You've got goldenrod coming up through there. There's more Eutrochium coming up in the back. Anyway, what we came over here for is this plant right here, actually. Oh, there's a cool bee on it hanging out. So we came over here for this guy. Yeah, again, no, we don't get prairies in New England. We get stuff like this, these hedgerows, these forest edges. Come on, work with me here. There we go. So this is Thalictum pubescens. This is another, really iconic, you'll get this in habitats like this. Doesn't usually grow as densely as like some of these asters do, Eutrochium and the solidago. But nonetheless, I just wanted to show you what's left over on these are all of the residual ovaries. Each little spike you get on the tip of those, that was the style. So obviously there's stamens on this too when it's fresh. But if I'm not mistaken, these are monoecious. You get male and female flowers, or maybe they're dioecious. Maybe they don't, they don't all produce male flowers. But anyway, that's a cool one. That's obviously it's done. Like I said, most of the members in this family bloom much earlier in the year. Still gonna have your trademark, almost universal to this family, compound leaves there. So, just wanted to show you that. You also got, what else you got over here? Lovely, lovely natives that anybody can plant. These grow real easily. The Spirea alba, nice member of the rose family. Maybe they are dioecious, actually. I'm looking at this now. So here's another one that produced no ovaries at all. But you can clearly see there were flower heads on it. Maybe those were staminate flowers. I'm going to lean dioecious, and if I got that correct, I'll be pretty impressed. So you see behind, that one's all swollen up, and then this one's got nothing. That's, yeah, I think they're dioecious. How fascinating is that, okay? This guy right here, looks like a solidago, but it's not. Used to be in the genus Solidago, now it's in the genus Euthamia. I can never get it right. We get two species, Caroliniana and gramnifolia. To me, they look almost identical, but they, marginal, very slight differences in the leaf morphology, and they bloom. The phenology is different. They bloom at different times of the year. I really get nothing else to say. There's a cool orchid around the corner from here, not in bloom. Look at this. Look at this gargantuan, just gargantuan bee on this thing. Oh my God. Sorry, there was a lot of disturbance in this video and I went around. This could be kind of a long one, but I had some stuff on my mind. Euthamia, Solidago, Eutrochium, Spirea. There's milkweeds here, but they've already senesced for the year. There's an origeron back in there. Lots of asters. Do it for the... Oh, he left. There was a bee on there a second ago. Can't get enough. I planted some of these this year. These will flower the first year. You throw the seed down, they sprout. These will flower the first year. This is... Eutrochium has been such a pleasure to grow. And they really don't get out of control. It really does not, even in other locations that it's been introduced to, I guess really it'll spread, but really just does not get out of control. It needs moisture. It needs a lot more, not a lot more, but needs more moisture definitely than Solidago. So anyway, let's wrap this up and get out of here. And last but not least, just real quick, it's obviously no longer in bloom, but this is the spot in the field here where you get Lacera. You get a real cool orchid. I talked about this extensively last year, so you can go watch that if you really have an intense desire to know more about it. Looks like they did just fine this year, but last year they were growing, a foot and a half taller than it looks like they got up to this year. Although looking at the little basal rosettes around, it'll be back. They can't, orchids, orchids don't really go balls to the wall every year, if you know what I mean. And you could have, dozens, if not hundreds in a population, with only maybe a handful of them flowering. A lesson I learned when I finally tracked down Isotria medioloides earlier this year. But this is not really a super rare species like that one. And just wanted to check in, bookend it. Apologize for the rant earlier and just say, invasives, it sucks. It's a pet peeve of mine when people just kind of do the whole, lay down and, fuck it. Like, what's even the point of trying to do anything about it? Because truth be told, there is a lot you can do about it. And I get it. Stuff that's beloved here is invasive elsewhere, and stuff that's beloved elsewhere is invasive here. That's just a fact of the matter. I get it. Australians understand, New Zealanders understand, South Africans understand, Japan understands. There's a strong desire to preserve what's truly native, because these are treasured plants, and invasives are a massive detriment. And the whole, stuff's always been moving around. Things get into new habitats all the time. Not only is that not necessarily true, long distance dispersal events have historically been ridiculously rare and tend to greatly, shake up, the ecology of where they land. Look at the silver swords in Hawaii are a great example of it. Those are descended from tarweeds, which are West Coast natives. They got dispersed thousands of miles across the ocean, got to Hawaii, and radiated to something completely different than what their closest relatives look like on the mainland of North America. These long-distance dispersal events, like we humans do constantly now, were absurdly rare prior to, humans moving around. And granted, humans did move plants around for thousands of years, but here's two things you have to keep in mind with that. We did that over thousands of years, not instantly in a day, all right? Think about how long it took us to reach new continents. Yes, we greatly altered the habitats of the areas we went to, especially the indigenous Americans in North America, just because I can speak to that. Spread fire, they moved plants around, they did a whole bunch of stuff, but it was not at the scale or to the level of detriment that it is being done now. That is all I want people to understand. The scale at which things move around now, and the rate at which we degrade habitats, which is usually a precursor to invasives moving in. Like I mentioned before, a lot of aggressive plants in New England are colonizers of disturbed soil. When there's a forest cut, they come in and they're the first things to grow. They grow aggressively, they spread, and then over years they will die as forest cover moves back in. That is the ecological regime of this region. You bring something from outside that region which does not share that regime, it's going to cause problems. That's all I'm saying. I get it. You don't have to fight every single non-native plant. Queen Anne's lace is everywhere in this field, but guess what? It doesn't really bother much, you know? Not every non-native plant is a complete, it needs to be demonized. So anyway, the video's gone long enough. Wanted to just talk about Clematis, turn into a whole speech about invasives and about how your baseline changes, baseline theory. Europe has been degraded for a lot longer than North America. You guys have a lot more non-natives. The overall biodiversity of Europe is significantly less than, never mind New England. This isn't even a biodiverse region of the country, but like tropical regions, Europe does have Mediterranean regions, but you know what I mean. Anyway, I'm not trying to shit on it. It's just they have a very different perception on what, habitat can look like, because they do have it there. Lots of cool plants in Europe, lots of cool ecological niches in Europe, but by and large, you have a lot more people living in a region that's almost exclusively temperate, and it's been trampled by humankind for thousands of years. Anyway, that's all I want to say. Go ask some of the Scots about what their forests used to look like, before everything got turned into sheep fields. It was, trust me, you guys don't have the set point that people from other places in the world do, especially if they're from the tropics, and especially if they're from areas that were, only settled a couple hundred years ago. I'll get off my soapbox now. You can leave plenty of hateful comments down below in the comments. You can tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I generally don't care. I'm going to keep pulling invasives, and I'm going to keep, promoting, restoration of native habitat. I don't really care if you, live with the invasives where you're at. You do what you want, whatever. Tell me to go fuck myself. It's okay. Have a good one.